we would expect. We had we had a lot of media interest in the mechanics of the election, and because because those issues are more top of mind right now than they have been. So we were prepared for that on a number of different levels. We were able to provide assistance to the media in terms of accurate information about what was going on, that was or how processes would work. Gina had an ongoing role participating with our weekly meetings with a Native American voter communications group that included the Secretary of State's staff as well. Avery has continued to be out there as well. Both Gina and Avery combined, they did presentations involving the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, which of course we also partnered with on our ASL voter education guide.
Excuse me, Tom. Yeah. Can I interrupt for just a second?
Please. Yeah.
Just to let the commissioners know, and Kara too. So we actually were not live streaming on YouTube. There was a glitch, but we are live streaming now. So it is possible that the roll call and the action taken on the minutes was not streamed live for the public to view. So, but we are definitely live streaming now.
Okay. Kara, do you want us to do anything over, or what do you want to do?
I don't think taking the roll call is necessary.
And if it matters, Kara, too, we do have a recording of it. So we did get a recording of all of the action. It just wasn't live streaming up until now.
Okay.
And the court reporter is doing a transcript as well.
Correct. If the court reporter can read back the approval of the minutes and the vote, I think that will make sure all the bases are covered in terms of open meeting. Is the court reporter able to do that?
We'll find out.
Lilia, did you get that? Can you unmute and repeat your needs? Thank you.
So this is Chairman Galen Payton, ready to call order. It's November 19th, 2020. I'm calling this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to order. If you will take attendance, if Commissioner Chan, are you here? Commissioner Chan, I'm here. Good morning.
Oh, excuse me. I don't think that the roll call is necessary. If you can just read the motion to approve the minutes, the second, and the vote on that. And thank you, Gina, for the update while we put the court reporter on the spot.
Item 2, discussion and possible action on minutes for the August 27th and October 27th meetings. Any discussion? If not, do I have a motion? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Chan, Mr. Chairman. Can I make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 27th, 2020 and October 7th, 2020 meetings?
Yeah, this is Steve Tittle. I make that motion.
Ms. Carlson, do you need me to go back?
No, you can just keep going.
I'm sorry, was that keep going and read back?
Sorry, that was keep going, read back. And for all the commissioners, because the court reporter is just trying to read back the minutes so that there is a full entry for people who were attempting to watch live and missed this early part of the meeting. If you can please keep your microphones on mute while while the court reporter finishes reading this, that would be helpful.
So we have a motion, Commissioner Tidla, I'll second that. Chairman Kimball, okay, Commissioner Tidla will second the motion and we will do a roll call. Commissioner Chan, do you need me to read the roll call?
Yes, please just read the roll call and then I think we should be done.
Commissioner Chan, how do you vote? Commissioner Chan, aye. Chairman Payton, Commissioner Meyer, aye. Chairman Kimball, Commissioner Kimball, aye, and Commissioner Tidla, aye. And Commissioner Galen Payton votes aye as well.
Okay, thank you guys for all of that. And now I think we can return to business.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll just kind of continue with
Go ahead,
the,
Tom.
thank you. So as you can see from the report, we highlighted a lot of the ongoing voter education activities we had going on leading up through the general election, really right up through the election day itself. And so we met, Avery and Gina in particular met with a whole variety of different groups in a variety of different settings. So in this way, the technological, this is another way in which some of the pivot we've made to some of the technological platforms we have, I think, has been helpful. Also say, and we'll talk more about this in the review in the sort of review of the general election, but we kept up with considerable amount of phone calls, emails throughout the election, which Avery and Julian in particular had a lot of work to do, and then Alec obviously kept our website continually updated as issues would develop that we could anticipate questions about. We would add to those. So Gina will talk more about that in our next section, but I just wanted to sort of give a high level on that. With respect to some of the cases we've had, we do still have one Court of Appeals decision concerning the what really concerns the late appeal by a group called the Legacy Foundation Action Fund from the 2014 election. That is currently at the Court of Appeals and pending a decision. We had some supplemental briefing that we had to do that was due last week. So that's where that is. No one has filed a petition for review in the Azan case that we talked about in our October meeting, to my knowledge. So that case should at some point be remanded to the Superior Court in Maricopa County. And then finally we do have some open complaints, and we may honestly, we anticipate probably a couple of more complaints over the course of the next weeks as folks sort out post-election issues. So that's really the report. I think I wanted to mention for all the commissioners that Kara Carlson, who, as you all know, has been our longtime legal advisor, has been appointed to the Developmental Disability Advisory Council for the state by Governor Ducey. which was exciting news. So congratulations to Kara. And then on the line with us today is Kyle Cummings, who is a attorney joining the section that the election attorneys have been in. I'm sure you'll get a chance to meet Kyle in the coming weeks and months. So that completes my report, unless anyone has any questions for me, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Tom? Actually, a question for you. This is Galen Payton, by the way. The number of participant candidates funded for the general was 31. Is that higher, lower than normal?
That's a good question. I would have to defer to Mike on that. Mike, do you know?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. That number is about average for what we've been having over the last couple election cycles. It's a tad bit higher, but not by a whole lot. So we're pretty happy with it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, this Chairman, Steve Titler.
Yes, Titler.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend the Clean Elections commissioners and staff, executive director, for doing a good job in reaching out to all the people in Arizona. I saw the notices of the election and educational effort as done by the Clean Elections in various places in the state that I was in. I saw it on billboards, heard it on the radio, and I think it was even on TV. So I commend the executive director and staff for a good job. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I raised my hand,
Yes.
but I don't know if you saw it. And it was pretty late. I just want to echo what Commissioner Titla just said, that, compliment the staff on a successful election cycle and a job well done, especially under these circumstances with the pandemic in the background. I think, they did a fantastic job under any circumstance, but particularly under these circumstances. And, just want to recognize that. So thank you all very much. And in particular, I want to mention that I had a friend reach out to me who was panicked on the deadline to make a mail ballot request for her mother, who had had a stroke and was in a nursing home or long-term care facility and outside of her county. And Gina was able to facilitate with the home county as well as Maricopa, where the mom was living and is still living, to make that happen. A special board was able to go out with a Pinal ballot. I think somebody came from Pinal County actually, but with some help from Maricopa. So thank you, Gina. And I wanted to write an email to the folks at Pinal and Maricopa and recognize the staff over there that I feel like, I know that's their job, but I really felt like that really mattered to my friend and, who's a constituent. This is just what happens in people's lives. Her mom couldn't help herself to vote this time. And the timing was just that way, that she was having her mom's mail forwarded to her, but of course, election mail does not get forwarded. So there she was stuck, and it was like 1 o'clock on the last day to request a mail ballot. And she wasn't even really getting mail in a reliable way to this long-term care facility. So it really meant a lot to them. And her mom was thrilled to be able to cast her ballot. And so I wanted to recognize Gina for that and the election workers for that as well. So thank you.
Any other questions? Any comment from the audience on this? Please signal the moderator. And I don't even know. Am I supposed to be the moderator? I don't even know.
Oh, no, Mr. Chairman. Kathy is the moderator in this case.
Okay, because I'm not like Captain Technical. So,
no.
Okay. Item 4, discussion and possible action on 2020 general election overview. Tom is going to begin the discussion and off to Gina. Mr. Collins, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I just want to really quickly, hit some of the highlights. I know that Gina will take over here. I just want an overview of just wanted to say as by way of introduction, obviously I think we all know now that this is probably the highest turnout. Well, this is the highest turnout election we've had in perhaps, well, in a very, very long time. Participation rates were really incredibly high. Although we don't have a certified statewide canvass yet that will finalize the state election, the counties of the state are doing their certification of their canvasses over the course of the between now and next, I think the 23rd, and then a week from that is the statewide canvas. So I'm going to turn it over to Gina, and then I think we'll come back a little bit to talk about what's going on, if anything, at this point with there is some litigation still out there around this particular election. So Gina, and Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll kick it over to Gina.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Yes, today we have a presentation for you that is really more focused on the current events that have been surrounding the election. Typically, we do a presentation to the Commission more about our outreach efforts and our metrics and statistics, and we'll have that for you in January. So today we're just really going to focus on sort of the current events and the issues that have been happening around the election. I do have a presentation. You should have it in your packet, but you could also follow along on screen, and I am going to share my screen right now. So give me one moment. Share, and hopefully you all can see my screen. If not, somebody please jump in and let me know, but I'll keep going.
I see it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so as we know, the general election was held on Tuesday, November 3rd this year. As Tom mentioned, turnout was one of the highest that we've had. It's the highest that we've had in a while, quite frankly. I think there was one year maybe in the 60s where it was higher. I have to double check that, but in most recent years, we did break turnout records. We were just shy of that 80%, but it was still really great to see all of the voters turn out this year to participate. So some of the topics that we're going to be covering today are voting during the pandemic, some of the issues that happened with the United States Postal Service, the voter registration deadline, ballot by mail security, how long it takes to tabulate, Sharpies, and how to confirm if your ballot was counted, and of course recounts about the election. And so I'll jump in about voting during the pandemic. So the counties and the Secretary of State's office and our office, we've been doing a lot to educate voters leading up to the election about the safety measures that were going to be put in place to keep voters safe if they decided to go vote in person, but also strong education about the process for getting your ballot by mail. That way, if a voter felt that was the best interest for them and their family, they knew how to do it. So some of the things that the county did to ensure voter safety at voting locations, there was personal protective equipment for the poll workers. They had sanitation protocols that they had to follow, and of course they implemented that social distancing, the social distancing guidelines, both with markers for where people knew where to stand, but also in spacing out the secrecy booths, the voting booths, and also looking for larger facilities as well so that they could implement those distancing requirements. And many of our counties this year, we saw a large increase in the availability of ballot drop boxes. These are secure drop boxes located throughout the county where a voter could drop in their voted ballot, sort of like a mailbox, if you will. So we saw a lot of those available, and it was just another option for voters and how they could return their ballot. And as far as the education goes for what voters can do, we did educate them on all of these measures that the county took to ensure their safety, but also for voters, considering your options, whether it's voting early when there's probably going to be less people at the voting locations, considering ballot by mail, and coming prepared, knowing who you're going to vote for. That way you can limit your time in the actual voting location, and to mask up and maintain those physical distancing and all of those CDC guidelines as well. And we did launch a campaign to recruit poll workers in participation with the Secretary of State's office. That way we could ensure that the counties had the staff that they needed for those voting locations. There was some concerns about, when we look at who is high risk in terms of COVID-19 and who our typical poll workers are. We wanted to make sure that the counties had the necessary staff in terms of poll workers. So we did participate in recruiting poll workers as well. So the next topic is the United States postal system. This proved to require a lot of voter education and a lot of concerns from voters. The United States postal system, they advised that there should be a minimum of a 15-day round trip for both requesting and returning a ballot by mail. So what does that mean for Arizona voters? Our Arizona statutes allow a voter to make a request for a ballot by mail 11 days before the election. So if you do the math there, then that does not equate to the full 15-day round trip to both receive and return their voted ballot by mail. So our office, and again, in conjunction with the counties and the Secretary of State's office, we focused highly on educating the voters about what this means and what their options are. So making your request as soon as possible to get an early ballot by mail if you're not already on People, how to do that, and voting that ballot as soon as possible and returning it by mail if that's your plan. But if you don't want to return it by mail, those drop boxes that I mentioned earlier are available. And of course, all voting locations in your county, you can drop your ballot off there too. So we also had to dispel some myths as well, such as don't put a stamp on your early ballot return envelope because postage is prepaid. And so some voters were thinking, well, maybe if I add more stamps, that could speed up the process if I send it back as first class mail. So we had to have a discussion about how this mail is processed, and actually, in fact, if you add a stamp, that could delay the processing time. So there was a lot of focus on how to vote and what the impact, potential changes at the United States Postal Service could impact that. So, and already Arizona is a very strong vote by mail state. About 80% of our voters already voted by mail. In the primary election, we saw 88% of the vote was done by early ballots. So we were taking efforts to basically let voters know that we have the system in place, we have the infrastructure in place, we have a long, proud history of voting by mail. We are not a state that is just putting this together in the past 6 months. We've got this system very well in place, and so voters can have confidence in the system. And all of this also included how to track your ballot. So voters can track the status of their early ballot online. Maricopa County has a wonderful text and email alert system, and so we were educating voters on how that they can track their ballot themselves, so they can have confidence in knowing that their ballot is on their way to them and that it was received back.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Gina, I have a quick question for you. On that last slide, the 80% figure.
I'm sorry. Who is the speaker, please?
This is Damian Meyer. And my question was on the 80% figure of Arizona voters voting by mail. Do we know the breakdown of what percentage of those drop off on election day or after the mail deadline? I'm just curious because that is what creates, that's what takes longer to count, right? Is those folks who drop off their early ballots on election day or the couple days before. Do we know that number?
Chairman, Commissioner Meyer, I don't know that number for this election. I can tell you that that is data that we would love to have and to know. And so we can definitely work with the counties to try to research that a little bit more. Usually the data that is made publicly is the amount of ballots that were not counted, that were rejected because they were received after the deadline. And just in the numbers that we're reporting, after Election Day, the county still had several 100,000. I mean, after Election Day, I think there were about 600,000 ballots around that time. And Tom, feel free to correct me on that number, but I think there were around 600,000 ballots that still needed to be tabulated post November 3rd. So there's definitely quite a bit. And again, that comes down to the voter has the right to drop it off up until 7 p.m. on election day. But we did take education efforts to let people know to return it as soon as possible because of the impacts that could have. So in particular, this year, the counties were able to begin tabulating 14 days before the election. I believe that ended up being October 20th. And so we did provide voter education about, hey, counties can begin tabulating today, get your ballot in. The results that are posted on 8 p.m. on election night, those are all of the early ballots that are counted up until that point. So we did do a push along with our election official partners to encourage people to return their ballot as soon as possible. And in particular, because of the issues that we were seeing and the concerns over the impacts and potential mailing delays with USPS. But that data would be very interesting to have because it also can impact the timing of our messaging as well. So we will be looking forward to getting that information in the future. But
is there, and I'm not going to say it's a problem, but it just kind of limits efficiency. Is there any discussion on a way to sort of address that issue that makes it a little less
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Meyer,
someone's landscape turn that.
Not something it's not something I have control over, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
And Gina, you can. I don't mean to step in here. I was just going to ask to answer Commissioner Meyer's question on the question directly about what's been discussed about this. I wanted to. There's sort of a two-part answer from my perspective. So I don't know, Gina, if you want to go first or how do you want to?
Well, I think the additional comments that I would provide are that the legislature did make a law change, and I referenced this with when the counties can begin tabulating. So it used to be 7 days, and the legislature made the change where counties can begin tabulating 14 days before the election. And many of our counties have new election equipment. Maricopa in particular purchased new election equipment. And those two procedures, or those two items right there, all contribute to a faster count time, faster tabulation time. So from what I'm seeing so far, this particular election cycle, during a pandemic, during the highest turnout that we've actually seen, tabulation occurred actually really well. The counties, I think, were spot on in their efforts in getting those ballots counted. There are, by law, we can't actually finish tabulating 5 days after the election because there is a statutory cure period where voters have the right to verify their signature if there's any concerns when the counties are doing the signature verification on early ballots, and also 5 days after the election for a federal election. For conditional provisional ballots where voters need to provide their follow-up ID. So, when we look at that time period between, we know we can't start or we can't complete tabulation before 5 days after the election, and the counties have by law 6 to 20 days after the election to finish tabulating. I think that the counties were in a really good spot with where they landed. And then also when that tabulation does finish, it's still not ready to be canvassed yet because of all the other post-election activities that need to be undertaken, such as logic and accuracy testing and the hand counts, all of those procedures that are done to verify the tabulated votes. So Tom, I don't know if you want to add more to that, but those were the additional thoughts that I had on that matter.
No, I just wanted to add two things, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that.
Okay, this is
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I was just going to ask if I should proceed.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners. We'll jump forward to voter registration. So statute does state that the voter registration deadline is 29 days before the election. That would have put us at October 5th for the general election. There was a lawsuit where the court ruled for an extension to October 23rd at 5 p.m. And then that was appealed, and we ended on where the actual voter registration deadline ended up being October 15th. So there was a grace period involved there. So there was some uncertainty about any voters that submitted a voter registration form after October 5th, would they be eligible to vote in the general election? And so the final ruling on that was any voter who was registered by October 15th at 11:59 p.m. would be eligible to vote. But during that time period and the uncertainty of what was happening, both Tom and I participated in a lot of communications, both with the media and our office, of course, with voters about this issue. So that was another issue that came up about the election. And moving ahead to ballot by mail security. So we did talk about the issues at USPS and what that could mean for ballot by mail. But there were a lot of concerns about the overall security, how secure is voting by mail. There were myths that were out there, such as, the counties send ballots to everybody. And that's not true. They only go to voters who are registered and have made a request for a ballot. So vetting has already been done to ensure that it is a registered voter who is receiving that ballot. There were concerns about, do early ballots even count? How do I know if the county got my ballot? How do I know if it was counted? Can somebody switch my vote? Can I trust the postman with my ballot? How do I know that they're not changing my vote? Basically just a lot of questions about, is this a secure process, and can I trust it? So our office, we had really great information on our website. We had a page just about voting by mail in this particular election, what the process is, how USPS is going to impact it. And then we had another page about the security of it, all of the checks and balances that are in place, beginning with such as the 90-day notice, where the counties send a notice 90 days before the election to every registered voter that is on the permanent early voting list to confirm that that voter still is at that address and that they still do want to get their ballot by mail. We've talked about the signature verification portion, which confirms the voter's identity, how that is undertaken. We've talked about how to confirm the status of your ballot, such as tracking it, but also to confirm that it was accepted and counted. So our office and the website had a lot of great information to address all of the concerns that we were hearing about from voters about the overall security of ballot by mail. And it's very important to note that, as I mentioned before, Arizona has this longstanding infrastructure on voting by mail. We've been doing it since the 90s. And while there's concerns at a national level, perhaps with other states that maybe don't have as a longstanding history with the vote by mail process, we know that voters were also hearing concerns at a national level. And so it was really important for us to just highlight that Arizona, in fact, is really advanced when it comes to voting by mail. So that's some of the education that we undertook. And I'll jump forward to ballot tabulation time, which we talked about a little bit already. So according to statute, the counties do have 6 to 20 days to canvass their election. So it's important to note that basically the process is 14 days before the election, counties can start tabulating all of those early ballots that come in. 8 p.m. on election night is when the first round of results are released. And those are all of the early ballots that have been tabulated up until that point. And then the remaining time on election night, those are all the results that come in are all of the voting locations from election day that are being reported. Then after election night, the counties are processing all of those early ballots that were turned in either right before or on election day and the provisional ballots. So those are the ballots that the counties have to process after election day. As I mentioned, that 5-day period, both for curing your signature on your early ballot. If the counties have any questions when they're verifying your signature, they'll attempt to contact you. And then if you did not provide sufficient ID at the polls, then you need to follow up within 5 days as well to get your conditional provisional ballot to count. And then there's the post-election activities that occur to verify the accuracy of the tabulation. So that includes those, there's a logic and accuracy testing that is done on every piece of equipment that is used in the election, both before and after the election. There is a hand count that is done in conjunction with the political parties. And that's done on a random sample of the votes. And so there's just a lot of procedures still after the election that the counties need to undertake all that all leads to the integrity and the accuracy of the process. When that is completed, when the county election officials have completed that, then it goes to the County Board of Supervisors to officially adopt the results. Once the County Board of Supervisors adopts the canvas, that is forwarded to the Secretary of State's office, and the Secretary of State aggregates all of the 15 results, and they adopt the official canvas, and that is done on the 4th Monday following the general election. So the official canvas has not occurred yet. That will occur on November 30th. And basically all of the information that I just provided there, we had a lot of inquiries from voters about what happens. And so again, we were able to create some great content for our website to drive people to about what the process is that happens after Election Day. Sharpies, let's see. Where to start on this one. So Sharpies, in Maricopa County, voters on Election Day were issued Sharpies at the polling place. This led to some confusion and misinformation about what is the correct writing instrument that is needed to fill out a ballot. When voters were completing their ballot with a Sharpie, several voters noticed that the ink bled through onto the other side of their ballot. And this led to concerns about, well, is that going to impact my vote? Will the machine be able to read my ballot correctly? And the answer is absolutely yes. So Maricopa County did purchase new election equipment this year. And after thorough testing and using the manufacturer's recommendation and even changing their ballot design, Sharpies were the recommended writing instrument on Election Day, and that's very important to distinguish. On Election Day, Sharpies were the recommended writing instrument, and that's what the counties purchased and provided at the polling place for voters. Now, the reason why is because the ink on the Sharpie dries fastest. And so when you're voting on Election Day, when the voter completes their ballot, they then feed it through the tabulator machine directly at the polling place. And so once that ink is dry, it works better with the tabulation machine. You don't want to run a ballot through the tabulator when the ink is still wet. That can cause some problems. So that's why the counties chose Sharpies for Election Day voters. They also designed their ballot in such a way that any bleed through would not impact any other races on the ballot. So there wouldn't be concerns for overvotes, for example. I will say that the concerns that voters had and the misinformation about this spread very quickly. And so we were seeing our office inundated with phone calls and emails about whether or not their ballot would be counted. And so we had to do some voter education on the polling place procedures, that yes, those were the official instrument that were provided to voters, and how Maricopa had new equipment and their ballot design and basically everything that I just shared. We had to educate voters on that process to calm their concerns about, will my ballot count? And we also talked about, if for any reason the tabulator cannot read a ballot, what happens then? And that is it goes to a duplication board, or it's adjudicated electronically. So basically, if the tabulator spits out a ballot, then it goes to a bipartisan duplication board after the election. So let me clarify. When the voter feeds their ballot at the polling place, then it's counted right then and there. Now, if for some reason the machine is not counting it, and the voter, let's say the voter just says, oh, go ahead and submit it, it goes into a ballot drop box bin, or if there's not a tabulator there at the polling place, and it goes back to the county for processing. When they run it through their high-speed tabulators, if the machine kicks it out, then it goes to a bipartisan duplication board, and the duplication board recreates the voter's ballot onto a readable ballot that is then ran through the tabulator back at central count. So really what I'm getting at is that if you voted on Election Day, your ballot absolutely counted. Either you fed it through the tabulator and you counted it yourself right then and there, or it went back to the county to be duplicated or adjudicated. And so there were a lot of concerns about, well, how do I know for sure if my ballot was counted? So we had to educate voters on what information is available to them online to verify them themselves. If you voted an early ballot, there's a process for looking at your early ballot and confirming it was verified, the signature was verified and was counted. If you voted on Election Day, then, as I mentioned, you either fed it through the tabulator and it counted right then and there right in front of you, or if it went back to central count, then it was absolutely counted. But the voter's voting history will also be updated, and it'll show that the voter did in fact vote in the election, and that's available online as well too. So we had to have a lot of conversations with voters and put voter education out there about this process and what it means. We did produce a page on our website to talk about this, and we also followed up and let voters know when Maricopa County completed their hand count, there was 100% accuracy there. They also had 100% accuracy on both on their post LNAs as well.
Gina, Mr. Chairman and Gina, can I just make a comment here? This is Amy Chan.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, I know, you know, I've worked in elections in one way or another since 2001. And I mean, I started at the legislature working with just the policy, like the legislative language, but Helen Purcell and Karen Osborne and Linda Whedon gave me an opportunity to be a troubleshooter for Maricopa County, learning hands-on working elections on election day, every election until I started at the Secretary of State's office, and I couldn't work for them anymore because I had my own job on election day in 2008. So I've worked elections that long, and it mystifies me, and I just want to say this on the record, that people act like election officials haven't thought out every single eventuality for every single situation for any variable, you know. And for example, you know, Sharpies, torn ballots, ballots with coffee spilled on them, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Gina mentioned, you know, ballot duplication boards. I mean, I know the average voter doesn't know all this stuff, and they're not expected to, but the lack of faith in our system, the fact that suddenly the average voter doesn't trust our system, I think is indicative of the fact that the leaders of the parties, maybe not both parties. I mean, I hate to say that, but I just feel like in the news I'm seeing every day, there is a distinct difference for partisan reasons, it seems. And I'm just saying what I'm seeing in the news. That we're seeing, you know, aspersions cast on our election officials, and it's really disturbing to see that. You know, Helen Purcell led that office in Maricopa County for years. She was a professional. She did an excellent job, led the office with integrity. I was devastated when she lost her election, and I'll say that I was nervous when we had a new recorder. I think Adrian Fontes rose to the challenge. I think he's done an excellent job. And I hope the same for this new recorder. But the fact is, we have laws on the books, we have procedures in the manual. When people go into, on election day, for example, even back in 2002, when I worked my first election, you know, if your ballot is if power goes down, for example, and the tabulator doesn't work at the election polling place or vote center now, you just put it in the machine and they'll do it at Election Central. It doesn't mean that your ballot doesn't count. It's just, there's always a way to ensure that your ballot counts. And the fact that people have no confidence anymore in a general sense is disturbing to me. And I do think that, you know, that's a huge factor here, because it's not the fault of the election officials. The election officials have this covered. You know, so nothing that Gina is explaining to us is new, aside from the equipment, of course. But the equipment's been around for a long time. I mean, it's all certified. I don't think it's brand new by any means, other than to Maricopa County. So I just felt like that needed to be said on the record. You know, none of this is new, and it's not, we have a lot of redundancies and ways to handle anything you can come up with for auditing and ensuring that everything goes right, and anything that is broken is fixed. So thank you for letting me pipe in here.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Chan, if I could add kind of my own thoughts to that as well.
Yes,
too.
go ahead.
I will say this year has definitely been the year for voter education. I will say that I have seen it at the forefront, and it's been critical in ensuring confidence in the system. I've in my experience, I've never seen voters more interested in wanting to learn about more of those details, the very specifics about how elections are administrated. And I will say what I have seen so far, and I've had a lot of communication with voters in the past few weeks, is that anytime there is a change causes suspicion a little bit. And this was a change for voters, especially the visual of seeing that ink bleed through. And so because there was that change, and I didn't say this before, but I should clarify it. There was a difference when you voted early in person. When you voted early in person in Maricopa County, you were issued a ballpoint pen. And the instructions when you vote by mail at home, you're told to use a ballpoint pen, but you can also use a Sharpie as well too. The reason why the Sharpies were necessary on election day was because of that fast drying ink and the ability to feed it through the tabulator. When you're voting early in person or early at home, your ballot is not fed through a tabulating machine. It still has to go through the signature verification process. And so, and then also the timing of when records are updated, the timing of when the counties updated the voter's record, whether it was an early ballot that it was counted or your voter history for when, if you voted on election day too. A lot of folks were seeing, well, you know, my spouse's record's updated, but mine's not. We voted at the same time. So I think all of those pieces also had a play in there, but I think the voter education aspect of it really was prominent this year. And I know Maricopa County did do voter education about their new equipment and the use of Sharpies. And Sharpies in this new equipment was also used in the PPE, in the presidential preference election, and in the primary election. But I also think this was also the year of the ability for misinformation to spread like rapid fire on social media as well too. So all of those challenges, I think, had an effect on this particular issue. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll proceed. So again, this all culminated in how do I know if my ballot was counted? So we provided information and the necessary links on our website, on social media to let people know how they can confirm their ballot was counted. There was a little bit of, well, I shouldn't say a little bit, but there was some misunderstanding about also how to read this information online. So if a voter voted on election day and they were actually sent an early ballot, so they did not vote their early ballot that was sent to them, and in fact they voted on election day, when the voter looked up their early ballot status online, it said canceled. And this led to more confusion about people thinking their vote was canceled. It is correct that that early ballot would be canceled because it is a safeguard to ensure that the voter does not vote twice because they voted on election day. So that early ballot would be canceled. If you voted on election day, you would not confirm that your vote was counted through the early ballot status application online. You would look at your voter history. So that also led to some misinformation out there that we also had to help provide voter education on. Recounts. Our office has also received a lot of communication from voters demanding that recounts occur. And so this was an opportunity for us to educate voters about the statutes and when a recount, when an automatic recount is triggered and when it does occur and how that process works. So we did share that information on our website, and then we also did provide on our website if somebody can challenge the results of the election. So there's been a lot of communication from voters who are demanding that a recount occur. And I think it's important to go back to some of the original voter education that we provided in those safeguards and those post-election day processes that the counties undertake. And I think it's important to state that in Arizona, we vote with paper ballots, and those paper ballots are read through the electronic tabulators. And we never take the electronic tabulators for word. We do testing on them. So prior to every election, the equipment, the election management system, it's all programmed and it's unique to that particular election. And there's testing done both before and after the election, both by the counties and the Secretary of State's office to ensure the accuracy of those tabulation machines. And then in addition to that, then there's the random sample of the hand counts that are done. And again, all of this is done under the observation and participation with political parties. And there's live ballot camera feeds that the voters can view. And the voters can also serve on a board. The voters voters can serve as poll workers. Voters can be a part of this process, and it's very transparent. And all of those mechanisms and those procedures are put in place to ensure that the results are accurate. And so Arizona's law does allow for an automatic recount, and that's when we meet certain thresholds. And so if the official canvas shows that an automatic recount is triggered, then what would happen is the Secretary of State's office would get a court action to authorize that recount, and then the counties would recount that particular race. So let's see. Our next slide. Oh, and I did want to share this information before we leave the recount section. We've had a lot of national election experts, national cybersecurity experts. We've had national experts on mathematicians and code. All of our experts have basically come out and said that this was one of the most secure elections in history, and it was done during a pandemic. And there were statements put out by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors about the accuracy of Maricopa's tabulation and the efforts that were put in place. So I just wanted to share that we are hearing from the election officials and the experts that there's no evidence that any tampering was done with the votes, and that it was a very secure election this year. And Tom, if you want to take over the legal updates section.
Hopefully. I just wanted to amplify a bit quick about what Gina just said. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a year where the questions that we were getting online and on the phone so clearly correlated with an event that was in the news or otherwise being discussed. I also, want to stress that, one of the things that Chairman Payton had talked about throughout the run-up in terms of voter education was about how important it was for folks to get their ballots back in a timely fashion. I do think that, given the 600,000 or so and the overall volume, I think that that emphasis on getting things back resulted in the count going more quickly than it otherwise would have. And you'll notice that to the extent folks are talking about their issues with this election, it's not related to the specific idea that because the count is taking X amount of days, there's something suspect about that. So I think that's an insight that Chairman Payton had that was important. And then, I also think that based on what Gina's, assessment here, I think that there's still a siloing of voter education efforts among counties, secretary's office, and our office. And what that means is that although there are, as Commissioner Chan pointed out, procedures for everything, there's not necessarily an explanation. There's not necessarily a 500-foot view or a 35,000-foot view of what that looks like. The canceling a ballot issue, for example, there's room there for us to hopefully continue to build those relationships so that when those things get launched, we can say, hey, what's the question we're going to get on this? It's going to be, what does canceled mean? Those kinds of things, which I think we have the credibility established and also the attitude and means to assist with. So I'm hopeful that we can continue in that direction. Finally, just to hit, before I get into the legal stuff, just to hit Commissioner Meyer's question about, what would change dramatically the count time. I mean, my understanding, for example, is California is still counting ballots. It's just that nobody cares, So
are you saying that 5 million vote lead is probably going to hold in California?
I anticipate that, but I mean, my point is that there was it's just, but the most dramatic thing that's been suggested at the legislature in the past couple of years would be something along the lines of saying, if you get your ballot by mail, you have to return it by mail. And so that or something along those lines. So what that would mean, I mean, in other words, the way the system is currently set up, voters have essentially the most amount of options to cast their ballots. But there is a trade-off. The more options you have to cast your ballot, so long as you meet the 7 p.m. deadline on election day, that, you know, there's a back end time cost on that. So so that's part of the trade-off. With respect to the cases, there are, to the best of my knowledge, there are 2 cases that are still alive. So let me just kind of hit these quickly. The Aguilera v. Fontes 1, which is the first bullet point, that was a case specifically, I think, about, well, specifically basically about the Sharpie issue. The plaintiffs voluntarily dismissed that case, and then later refiled a slightly different case, which is Aguilera v. Fontes 2, which is the last bullet part. That case, the second case, is still, as far as I know, not been dismissed. The second case, Donald J. Trump for President v. Hobbs, was different from many of the other cases in one respect. It was not a case that was about changing the results or changing a process. It was about challenging whether the way in which you cast a ballot at a polling place on election day, where you get the choice to press the green button to cast the ballot, which, if you have an overvote, means that overvote is not going to get reviewed, is different from the process for mail-in ballots. So that case was about, you know, the legal issue in that case was about whether or not it was fair to treat those ballots differently. And there was evidence that some voters did not understand what the result of pressing the green button were, or may have been misinformed about it. So that's what so that case is more in the nature of a, if you all recall, you may not, there was a case involving now Congressman Biggs and Christine Jones when they ran against each other for that seat. What the Jones campaign did, although they ultimately lost the election, before the canvass came in, they wanted to make sure that all of the votes that could be counted were. So that was their piece of litigation. So that's really what Trump versus Hobbs was about. When the case turned out it was mathematically impossible for the number to make any difference at all, the case went away. So it's a little bit different. In other words, putting aside the presidential election, the Trump v. Hobbs case is really a more standard, let's make sure all our potential votes are in the hopper before the canvass. Republican Party v. Fontes is, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question.
I think we have it.
So Tom, just so I understand, I think that the Trump for President versus Hobbs case, that only dealt with something like 180 ballots.
That's
for
correct.
the presidential election, correct? It was
Right.
so minuscule that it
Right.
couldn't have affected the outcome, so that's why it went away, correct?
That's right. But the point is that the Trump lawyers said from the beginning, we would like, this only matters to us if it matters.
Well, but the complaint said this affects thousands of votes.
Well, I think
Potentially thousands of votes, I believe, is what the complaint
right.
said.
Well, but I mean, yeah, I mean, information that was held by the county, not by the campaign.
Gotcha.
So, you know, it just seems to me that there's let me put it this way. As an attorney, I find that there's a distinction between some of these cases in terms of their potential merit and the potential strategy. The Trump versus Hobbs campaign was not about overturning the results of an election in any way. It was about ensuring that all of the votes that could be counted were in before the canvass. That's a different philosophical basis for bringing a lawsuit, and different legal basis. Republican Party v. Fontes is a case that, again, I think we understand I understand is still pending. it has to do, so in statute, when you do the audit handout that Gina mentioned, in statute, you do that by precinct. However, counties can also do a vote center model. Because the vote center model is not really well articulated in statute, the election procedures manual says, well, if you're doing vote centers, do that sample based on vote centers, not by precinct. So now, again, this is a case that, the county's position essentially is this is not possible to do. There's just not time to do this. But what this would amount to do is that you'd have to find a way to back end a vote into a precinct that would have existed but for the vote center, and then you would get a bigger percentage selection for the hand count confirmation. So again, I'm not sure that this litigation would have any results, although that would mean anything, although it certainly would delay the certification. So I don't know that we have a final ruling in that case. Finally, the Aguilera 2, it really basically seems to raise a question of, how do I ever know if my ballot has been counted? Well, and it's sort of a proving a negative. I mean, it's a very, that case is a little hard for me to track with. In other words, we have a right to an anonymous ballot. So once your ballot is separated from your mail-in envelope, or once you cast it, it's just a ballot. So I'm not sure that I quite understand what the relief being sought there is. But nevertheless, as the governor noted yesterday, these are cases that exist, and how they affect anything going forward, I think is unclear that they will at all. But nevertheless, all election officers in Arizona are all going to say, and I correctly, that until the county and state canvases are complete, the election results are not final. That's really the highlights of those cases. I don't anticipate at this point any of them making a significant having a significant effect. And I think that the judges I sat in on, at least on the Trump, or I sat in via phone on some of the Trump v. Hobbs case, and then reading about the Republican Party v. Fontes case, the judiciary is very aware of the statutory deadlines that are here. So it's not like this is, it's not as if these cases are lingering. I'm just not sure how the relief in some of them could affect anything, and how it could, and how it could make a difference. If you'll notice, there is a political conversation about results where there are requests for some further action. The cases don't really, are at this point, are divorced from what the sort of political interest in a broader kind of audit or review. And finally, just as with all these things, we have received numerous communications from voters around the state asking the Clean Elections Commission to not sign off on any election until the results are further audited. And of course, that's not something the Clean Elections Commission is statutorily involved in. So there is that. So that's kind of the overview of the legal picture at this point. I think it's largely resolved. Unless anyone has any questions for me. Chairman, if you could take yourself off mute a second.
I have a comment. This is Commissioner Payton. I think there's a lot of confusion just because we have 50 states and 50 ways of doing things. And then the local people see all this other stuff going on that was willy-nilly in Nevada and Pennsylvania, where they changed stuff at the last minute. And I think that kind of poisons the well a little bit. I've voted by mail for many, many years. And my wife tracked when it got accepted and all that. And so I think our elections here, as I was worried about people dropping off early ballots the day of the election, 600,000 of them, actually, I'm sure our education whittled that down. It could have been over 1 million, who knows? I mean, and Gina, I just have to say, what a job, an immense amount of, and I couldn't imagine anybody doing it better. And so I have a lot of gratitude for your work, and you know, and I'm proud of how I feel Arizona stuff is. It's just when you hear on the news that there's 600 been counted, there's always something in the back of your mind saying, you know, well, why is that possible? Why are you so slow? Why are all of that? And I think all this other news about other states has clouded people. And really a lot of the people that are complaining are the ones that voted with their early ballot the day of. So anyway, that's my on the whole deal. Other comments or questions for Tom?
Yeah, Commissioner Payton, if I can make a comment.
Yes, Mr. Meyer.
I want to agree with you, Commissioner Payton, on what a great job Tom, Gina, staff have done in voter education. Very, just can't commend you enough on that. Thank you. And as far as the confusion and 50 states doing things differently, yes, I agree with that. That does create some confusion. But I also want to know it creates confusion when our public officials and our elected officials actively participate in creating that confusion, and that's something I think that we should look at. So.
Okay. Any other
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner
Kimball. Go ahead.
I just want to echo some of the comments made. It seems like before the election and then since then, this has just been a game of whack-a-mole with all kinds of allegations popping up. Some of them from inadvertent misunderstandings, and some of them not inadvertent. And I'm very impressed by how, as soon as something popped up, there was something on the Clean Elections website explaining it, debunking it, showing how you can check this thing for yourself. And I'm just really impressed by the job that Tom and Gina did on getting the accurate information out there quickly, because it seems like it was just a never-ending example of information that popped out of nowhere, and some of it intentionally, as Commissioner Meyer pointed out. But this is a really excellent example of educating voters and striking down a lot of this completely spurious allegations and suspicions.
Any other questions? If not, then we're going to go to item 5, discussion and possible action, 2021 chairperson.
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I do have a little bit more. May I have permission to proceed before we
Sure.
move to the next agenda item? Thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
One thing I would
Gina.
like, yes, thank you. One thing I would like to note that I'd like to show very quickly, and hopefully you all can still see my screen, are some statistics on our website. As I mentioned, in January, we'll have a more thorough overview of our metrics and our performance. But I think looking at this, it will address some of the comments that were just made by some of the commissioners. These are stats on our website, and I'm looking at a range from September 21st through November 13th. And again, the election was on November 3rd. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight to the commission in this graph right here, when we look at the traffic that we're receiving on our website and the source of where it's coming from, one of the things that we've seen this year that we have not seen in years past is that it's stemming from organic search, that people are organically, naturally going to Google and typing in their information that's driving them to our website. And that means several things. One, it means that the content on our website is trusted by Google. It is established as an official source of information and a good source of content. So we're ranking higher in our search optimization. And two, people, in light of this election and in light of maybe the politicization around it and the concerns, people have been looking to the Clean Elections Commission as the neutral party here, as the neutral organization to get their official factual information. And I think that's a really great thing that stands out in this election year. It shows that our office has been able to respond to those voters and giving them just the factual information. And I think when we look at the information of what voters are looking at, some of the pages on our website, how votes are counted, how to vote in person, how to vote by mail, our voter dashboard, they're registering to vote. All of this information lends to establishing that trust and promoting that participation in the political process, which is really meeting the heart of the Clean Elections Act, if you will. And then also when I go down here a little bit more and the Google search queries, how votes are counted. As I mentioned, in this particular time range that I'm looking at, we're looking after the election day as well. And we've also never seen the same amount of traffic on our website post-election day as we have now. People are still quite engaged and wanting to have that confidence in the system and learning more about it. And so I think it's great that the commission, a few years ago, if you'll recall, the commission invested in a website redesign, and our website is really the heart of our voter education and in communicating with voters. The traffic on our website, the search that we're receiving, it's all broken records this year. And again, it's meeting the needs of voters. And one thing I really like to point out too is over here, this pie chart of who's using the site. This is a very well reflected pie chart, and it shows that we're meeting all of the demographics in the state. We are not just educating Maricopa County, we're reaching the four corners of the state, we're reaching all 15 counties. And voting in Maricopa County in the city of Phoenix is very different from voting in Apache County or Navajo County. And so we have to be able to communicate to all voters and all their different circumstances, and our website is accomplishing that. So I just wanted to share this brief overview, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
No other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So on to item 5, discussion and possible action on 2021 new chairman. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Tom, where do we go?
Oh, and so just to clarify, so in November or December of the last several years, depending upon our schedule and preview of coming events, December we're going to have a budget stuff for you, and then in January voter ed. So we will have a pretty packed agenda. Basically, but it's not a staff. This is just, the point here is this is a discussion and decision amongst the commissioners. So I just to frame it to say, we when we have November, December meetings, we try to, because there's so many different things that have to be done before the end of the year, we try to balance the agendas to get done with what we can. And that's about it. Other than that, I think all of you have been participants in this discussion now for several years. So I would leave it to you to have your to have your discussion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Kimball.
Yes, Mr. Kimball, go ahead.
I would nominate Commissioner Chan to be chair for calendar 2021.
And so we have a motion. Tom, is this in form of a motion or?
I think so. I mean, I think that the nomination. I mean, the nomination to me is practically a motion. But if Chairman Commissioner Kimball, if you would mind moving moving that the commission appoint Commissioner Chan for 2021, just for the record, that might be helpful.
This is Commissioner Kimball again. I move that the commission choose Commissioner Chan to be a chair for calendar 2021.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Meyer. I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we will go through the roll call.
Don't you guys
Commissioner Meyer.
You guys don't need me to convince you or anything? I want to say thank you, first of all.
Wait till we vote.
Oh, wait, you got to hear the votes. Okay. Thanks for the nomination, though.
Commissioner, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay. Meyer.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Kimball.
Aye.
Commissioner Titla. Commissioner Titla.
Maybe he's not online.
Did he fall off? I don't see him on there.
Yes,
Okay.
he's no longer on the meeting.
Okay, and this is Commissioner Payton, and I vote aye as well. The ayes have carried, and so we will have a new chairman for 2021 Arizona Clean Elections Commission, Commissioner Amy Chan.
Thank you.
And so now you have to speech.
Yeah, well, I did want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your chairmanship and leadership this year. And I know this is kind of ceremonial because we all pass the torch to each other every year, but it does mean something to me. I've learned so much from each of you, and I think you know, I went from being, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I'll call it a freshman commissioner, you know, when I came on board, and I've learned a lot from all of you. And I think when I came on board, I was most excited about the voter ed piece of clean elections. And I kind of accepted the fact that, you know, I had gone through the Bennett case where it had kind of, I don't want to say decimated the participation of candidates, because obviously we still have a lot of participation. I mean, Mike just went over that with us. We still see some participation, but you know, without matching funds, we're not as competitive anymore as far as against traditional funded candidates. And so I kind of accepted that when I came on board. And we've seen the rise of dark money. And I think just in hearing what other commissioners have to say, I think my vision for the next year, while I'm chairman, I'd really like to take a look at and maybe work on some things with looking at dark money, and if there is something we could do as a commission to address that and somehow bring some more integrity to our elections in Arizona and kind of get some more kind of reinvigorate that part of our mission. I don't know how we'll do that. I know it's a tough road to hoe because of you know, how the law is right now, but maybe we can get creative and kind of take a fresh look and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to have you all with me, and looking forward to continuing to work together. I know you guys have been on here well past your time, but I think we're a good team. So thank you so much for continuing to come to meetings and making this continue to work. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Chairman?
Any other? Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Chan, thank you. I'm sure we're going to be in great hands. I look forward to working with you for another year. And I guess I would just, on the voter education, it's wonderful, but personally, I find the rulemaking and that's just fantastic. I'm kidding. I 100% agree with you on the voter ed. It's wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to another year in the commission. So, thank you.
Any other comments? So Tom, do we just have left our adjournment?
We have public comment. If there's any member of the public, Kathy, I don't know if we have any members of the public who have joined us.
I do not believe so.
Ms.
Okay.
Knox is on the line.
I'm sorry?
I think I see Ms. Whitco Knox is on.
Oh, is she? Okay.
So do we have any public comment?
Kathy, if you could check if Rivco Knox is on the line. And
I am on the line. I don't know if you can hear me. This
Yes.
is Rivco Knox. It is a pleasure to follow everything that Clean Elections Commission did during this election in light of a lot of challenges of all kinds. I think the website is absolutely amazing. I did mention to staff, and I'm not sure this information filtered all the way to the commission, and I know there were several meetings canceled, so I did not have a chance to say this, but the League of Women Voters did some voter education of its own, sent out a very large number of postcards. And on the postcards, it just talked about the security of vote by mail and a lot of other facts about deadlines and everything else. But it also included a reference to the Clean Elections Commission to obtain information about the candidates and the voting process. And I did not design these cards. I have no visual skills or that kind of thing, but I was really excited to see that on the cards because I do think that the commission's website and all the stuff that staff and the commissioners do is invaluable. And I'm not quite sure what the next steps. I also want to say, again, on behalf of the league, how much we appreciate the endless commitment of the commissioners, several whose terms expired quite a long time ago, to continue to attend meetings and participate. As I think you all know, letters were sent encouraging the governor and the secretary of state to appoint commissioners. Clearly with the election and everything else that's gone on, nothing happened there. I'm not sure if we'll try again, but hopefully something will happen soon because there is there's a limit to everyone's commitment in the public service, and B, it really is time for new commissioners to be appointed. But we continue to monitor and congratulate the staff and the commissioners for all the outstanding work that you do. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment? If not, I would enter a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
This is Commissioner Kimball. I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a we'll roll call. Commissioner Chan.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Kimball.
Aye.
And I guess Commissioner Titla may not be here. And this is Commissioner Payton. I vote aye as well. We are now adjourned. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care,
Be safe.
everybody.